The injuries?
Yes.
I'd pass that on to Tiffany over here.
But what do you see for the ladies, the young ladies who are 16, 17, who are talented girls in tennis?
The talented players are now developing what's called an off-wrist injury for their weak, their non-dominant hand, so that they're using so much of the left hand through the shot that that's a relatively newer injury, and it's coming to the advanced players. And so that's that, and the upper body for the gals. They have a tendency to work the lower body, but they don't do a lot of upper body strength. I think now that they're getting much more, the women are so much smarter on the practical training for sports, and the whole core training that they're doing nowadays is phenomenal, which most guys don't do. And
the Pilates and the
yoga.
abdominal. Yeah.
I think that brings up an interesting point when you have someone like Gordon, who's a pro and out there all the time, and he sees the injuries that are occurring, and we get to talk to him. And now what we should do is focus on preventing these injuries. Since we know, I believe you said, that almost everyone will get tennis elbow. It's just a matter of when and where. And in today's society, when we're using computers all the time, lugging in all of our groceries at once because we don't have time to keep going back in and out of the car. So we're putting all these added strains and stressors on the elbow to begin with, then running out to practice. It's like, let's focus on prevention. And it sounds like the women are doing a better job of that.
They definitely do. They definitely do.
Well, there are also a lot of trainers available now,
Yes.
you know, who are very sports specific. You know, there are people who just are geared towards tennis players or geared towards soccer players, and there's a lot more knowledge about women in sports and what type of injuries. And also for the young men who are growing up, they get their injuries probably from age 14 on because they're not strong enough to be 16, 17, 18, yet they want that. And so they must get some injuries. Are those overuse injuries, Rives?
Well, I think so. I'd like to ask Gordon about some of the elements of prevention. For instance, when someone goes out to the court in the first place, what should they do before they actually begin to play?
Good.
Stretching, warm-up?
I believe, you know, setting aside 10, 15 minutes, you know, especially if you have a certain muscle group or area that you're prone to being sore in, you want to make sure you go out and do a light stretch in those areas. It's even good to take out and start with a short court. You don't need to go back behind the baseline and take full swings. I think starting where, what I love to see somebody do is take an abbreviated shorter stroke at first, hit the center of the racket, clean contact, nice and clean, and then as I get the feel for that clean contact, I can move back farther and make a bigger stroke. But so many people come out and it's their hour or two of exercise a week and they want to make the most of it, and they go back and they start hammering away and their body's just not ready for it.
And then the other thing that the orthopedists think is really important is to have good muscle strength and tone. What kind of a weight program do kids, I always advise the kids to be on a, even after they've gotten well, do a separate weight program so they'll be stronger, less likely to injure themselves afterwards. What do you recommend for a weight program for a tennis player?
You know, I think at right around 12, 13, 14, whether it be the boy or a girl, it depends on how developed they are, and we really look towards our trainers to tell us, hey, what do you think of the joints? How strong are they? What are they able to do? You know, and making sure that they do light weights and do it soft and smooth. You know, a lot of boys with the macho feeling, they want to see how much they can bench press and jerk, and you know, and it's just more than, it's not what they need to be doing. So I think that's an old male philosophy getting into weight training, and you know, we need to get that nipped in the bud for those kids.
Okay.
But I think the overuse injury in almost all the sports now for the kids, as we were talking earlier, as far as the kids are having to commit to a sport so early nowadays. Back in Rives and our decade is you played 3 or 4 sports, and so you went after something for 3 or 4 months during the year, but then you got into another sport which used completely different muscles. Whereas the kids nowadays, through society and you know, they're being pushed to excel at something so early that, you know, they're having to make a decision when they're 9, 10, 11, and then they do that on a daily basis for years and years and years, and there's always competitions, and then it's like, well, when do we get the junior to take some time off?
To relax.
So to relax.
You know, that's a funny thing that comes up when you get a kid, a high-level tennis player in your office, and you know it's an overuse injury. It's not quite so bad that they can't go out and play. And you sit there with the parents and the patient and you try and figure out, okay, what's the timeline? What tournament do we need to get you through? And then when can we have you rest? And it is almost impossible to find a time period for resting. I don't know if you've run into that where they're like, well, I have this tournament, but then right after that is the qualifying one for this.
Right. It's nice to have an off season where then they do specific exercises but don't do the sport to make themselves stronger. Now we ought to talk about adults.
Adults, right. Adult recreational players, club players, all the USTA leagues that have really brought in a lot of later age players. Tell us about that at Courtside.
It's a fabulous program in that people can, in our early days at Courtside, we'd have weekend tournaments, and Rives would be out there, and we'd ask him to play a match at Saturday at 9, Saturday at 1, Sunday at 10:30 for the semifinals, and Sunday at 2 for the finals. Well, those days are gone, So now he might be able to ask the family, hey, I have a window of 3 hours on a Saturday afternoon. Can I go out and play for the team and the club and have a league match in? And that's worked out great for the members and for people playing the game. And it's a very social, yet people can be as competitive as they want. They can find their level of play and go out for social reasons or highly competitive. And
now, did this change because so many people joined tennis, and that's why there's so much demand for court time? Is that what happened?
Well, the league started around 20 years ago, the USTA leagues, and but a lot of it, I think, is just society. Tennis was historically a tournament event, but the idea of telling somebody that they had to keep their whole weekend open for a tournament, as can still be a challenge with juniors playing the game. If the family's got to keep the whole weekend open for tennis or soccer or whatever it may be. The adults can now set aside a 3-hour time block, and we can all manage that for one time a week. And yet you get out there, you got the camaraderie, you got the social aspect, So the club becomes sort of that third place in your life outside of home and work. Where can I go and just have a good time, see my buddies, see my friends, get some exercise, have a conversation, catch up, and then be on my way.
And be aerobic and fix your heart and breathe right and get your cholesterol down. Now, these players definitely have more injuries. So you probably see the weekend warrior athletes and the weekend athletes, both, Tiffany and Rives. That you must see many of these people. So what do they come to you when you see these?
Well, you probably see, I get a more selected referral pattern of people who ruptured their Achilles tendon or got a severe ankle sprain, and you probably see more of the overuse problems in
Right.
adults.
Well, quite often, because I do family practice and sports medicine, I will attract a patient who is often active, and I will be seeing them for their annual physical, and we'll be going through the body parts, and like, oh yeah, then my shoulder seems to start bothering me lately when I go out and I play tennis, and there are people who want to be out there playing, but they only find time in their life to do it once a month, and they go out and try and kill it without having proper warm up. And as we talked about, much like in the elbow, you create those micro tears when you go out there and just pound, and you're not properly warmed up, and you haven't been playing on a routine basis. As you get older, you can't pull it off like you do when you're younger. So you're right, I do tend to see a lot of the more kind of subtle subclinical complaints.
And you probably see a lot of sprains, ankle sprains, or knee sprains. And I see you have a knee brace.
Yeah, well, I just brought along several different braces. I mean, this is just an example of a type of brace, a sports type of brace, where when people have ligament injuries, some sorts of instability, perhaps they've had an anterior cruciate and had it reconstructed. Many people will wear a brace to give some extra support to that. This is just an example for people who haven't seen them much. I just